Okay, here we are. We are live. Hello, my name is Dr. Tonia Winchester. I am a naturopathic doctor, and I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Jeannie Doig, also a naturopathic doctor. I practice in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island, and Jeannie practices in Port Alberni and Tofino. And today we are going to be talking about how you can balance your hormones at menopause and perimenopause naturally. So hello. I am going to begin by asking you about one of the key hormones. So Jeannie, can you tell us about the role of progesterone at this time in a woman's life?
Yes, so when a woman gets into the older, not older, but as we mature into the 30s, late 30s, 40s, both hormones decline, progesterone and estrogen, but progesterone declines quite a bit faster than estrogen and a lot more. So what I show women is a graph. So you have estrogen up here and progesterone here, and they both go down, but progesterone goes down like this. So you get this gap, and this is called estrogen dominance. It's not because estrogen goes higher. It's just because it is more in comparison to progesterone. So progesterone declines, and you get what's called estrogen dominance as you age. And symptoms are variable for women. A lot of women experience insomnia and anxiety during this time because progesterone is your natural relaxation hormone. It helps you feel calm, it helps you sleep. It's a very important hormone for that. So women will experience mood changes, irritability, and as well, progesterone deficiency can cause other symptoms too. Some women experience weight gain with this estrogen dominance. As well, depression, mood swings, I have a big long list. Headaches, fatigue, breast tenderness, memory loss, loss of concentration, and hair loss. So there is a variety of symptoms that occur with this progesterone deficiency. And what I do with patients is I often measure through saliva their levels of progesterone compared to their estrogen to see how much of an imbalance is occurring with the woman, and doing things to support their progesterone with natural creams or herbs to help support their progesterone so this gap isn't quite so large and we bring that progesterone up.
Awesome. And what about the other main hormone, estrogen? How does that play a role here?
Yeah, so estrogen does decline as well, as I mentioned, and typically for the estrogen, low estrogen symptoms would be more the hot flashes, night sweats that we're looking at, as well vaginal dryness, painful sex, brain fog, shortness of memory, thinking, and more bone density loss as well with that lower amount of estrogen. So it's still important that they have healthy amounts of estrogen. And we can do that through foods. Certain foods are phytoestrogens, they're called. So they're 1/1000th the strength of your body's own estrogen. But they bind to the same receptors as estrogen and have a slight estrogenic effect, but nothing big. And what they do is they balance your estrogen. So if you have too much estrogen, it lowers it. And if you have not enough estrogen, it raises it just slightly. So foods that are phytoestrogen include ground flax seeds. So I often will explain to women to have a couple tablespoons a day of ground flax seeds to help support their estrogen. And also soy. Soy is a phytoestrogen as well. And again, it balances the estrogens. So it's very small, 1/1000th the strength of your estrogen. So it's not going to have a huge effect, but it will balance things out. And one form of soy I recommend is miso soup. Because it's fermented and it's not GMO modified, it's in a good natural state. And studies show women actually in Japan, they drink miso soup 3 times a day and they have lower rates of menopausal symptoms and lower rates of breast cancer than North American women. So, the theory is potentially the soy is helping balance the estrogen so they're not too high, not too low. Now there's different types of estrogens. There's I like to break it down. There's the big player estradiol, and it breaks down into little estrogens, estriol and estrone. And I often will test women's estrogens as well to make sure that they have enough of the good ones and not too much of the bad ones that can be more cancer promoting. So it's important that we work on detoxifying the bad estrogens and making sure we just have enough of the good estrogens. So again, supporting them with food, with herbs, and sometimes with natural creams as well, to help support those estrogen levels is what I do as a naturopathic doctor.
Awesome, thank you. Now, what about testosterone? You know, we hear about that as a hormone for men. Does that play a role for women?
It does. So testosterone levels are interesting in women. Some of the effects are the opposite of men. So when men's testosterone is lowered, they lose their head hair. For women, when the testosterone's higher, they lose their head hair and they get hair on their chin. So, but it's really not so much about testosterone being high. It's also the balance between the progesterone. So as the progesterone goes down more, this testosterone might sort of stay the same, but it's this imbalance again. It feels like it's more in the body because there's no progesterone there to balance it out. So the facial hair, the hair loss on the head, these are things, sometimes anxiety, insomnia. If I test a woman for testosterone, it's particularly high and their progesterone is particularly low, these women are set up for quite severe anxiety and insomnia, just because testosterone is more of your drive hormone and progesterone is more of a calming hormone. So this imbalance can be quite significant for some women. And then there's herbs that I use to balance the testosterone in women too. So I have herbs like Testo Quench. So it's a mix of herbs to lower testosterone, like saw palmetto and some things, chaste tree, fenugreek, white peony, things to help balance that excess testosterone in the body. And I would use that if I did a test and found that the woman had higher amounts of testosterone.
Wow, thank you.
Tonia, can you share your thoughts on the mind body stuff?
Yes, mind body energy perspective. And the really cool thing about menopause and symptoms is that in other cultures that have different perspective on aging, they don't see the same symptoms. So in cultures where it's actually revered for a woman to sort of come of age and step into her wisdom, they don't see the hot flashes, they don't see the brain fog and the sleep issues and the memory loss. So it's really fascinating to me that from a cultural perspective, we have this belief that as we age, we go down in value. And that's something that I see women really kind of struggling with at this transition time. And interestingly, there seems to be this sort of, for the women that go through it fairly easily, there's this almost revival of their spirit. It's like this reconnection to their own self. Actually, in Chinese medicine, they call this time of a woman's life the second spring. It's like a reintroduction to her needs and her desires. Christiane Northrup, who writes a lot about women's health, she talks about it's like removing the veil of hormones. So the progesterone and the estrogen that are designed to allow a woman to nurture and be a mother, they fade away, as you've just been mentioning. So we don't have that same sort of hormonal push to really take care of others, and it becomes an opportunity to reflect and take care of yourself. It's a really, really fascinating time.
That's great. It's so nice to look at it like this in a more positive way, what we're going through and just a new transition.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a disease process. It's a normal transition. Exactly.
And what herbal remedies do you use to support women who are approaching menopause?
Yeah, so playing off a lot of the, topics that you've covered earlier in our conversation, I'm going to be using herbs that are going to sort of boost hormones and also deal with some of the symptoms that those hormone deficiencies are causing. So one of my favorites is black cohosh and dong quai. These are more hormone supportive. They're going to start to actually trigger the hormone production in the body. I also love sage, and it's just that exactly what I was talking about, sort of coming into that wise wisdom, elder wisdom kind of thing. I love rosemary. I talked about rosemary before. Rosemary is one of my favorite herbs. It's really going to help the mind in terms of focus and concentration. And every herb I use is going to be, dependent on the woman, but I also really like hawthorn and motherwort. They're really good if there's heart palpitations. Often that can happen, especially when there's, sleep issues at play. And herbs for mood and anxiety, because that's going to play a role as those hormones go down. Like you said, we don't have the same sort of happy balanced moods that we might have before. So things like St. John's wort, Melissa, so lemon balm, tons of variety. I love herbal medicine because we can mix and match and find the perfect blend for a woman.
That's great. Thank you. Do you have any self-help tools that you use as well to suggest to your patients to relieve the symptoms of menopause?
Yes. And so one of the things that's really key to be aware of is that if there's any type of stress that's going on, physical, emotional, mental, even environmental, it's going to exacerbate these hormone deficiencies that we see in this time of transition. So we've talked before in our other conversations about cortisol going up, that's that stress hormone, and progesterone going down. It's going to make these symptoms worse. So stress management becomes a really key part of this, whether that is something like deep breathing, meditation. I really like recommending yoga, especially yin yoga for women at this time, because when we think of in Chinese medicine, there's heat, and that's that hot flash, and it's a lack of the yin energy, which is the cooling energy. So if we can introduce cooling activities like yin yoga, it will actually kind of calm the heat out of the body. So exercise is important too, to keep circulation up, and stress reduction, obviously comes from exercise as well. So I like the example, or I like the consideration of rest and movement, focusing on some of those more cooling resting activities. I also will often teach women how to do some acupressure, especially if they're going through a hot flash. There's a few points that they can massage on their own bodies to relieve some of that discomfort. And one is just right here between the eyebrows. And you can just put a little pressure with a little bit of a little circular motion for maybe 30 seconds. Another really good point for this is just right here between the thumb and the forefinger. Again, a little bit of a pressure and a massage is really nice to sort of take the heat out of the head and out of the chest. And there's another one just on the back of the wrist here. Sorry, you can see this, just a couple fingers width down from the wrist crease. That's another really good one to sort of take the heat out of the head and out of the chest. So some of those techniques are, really helpful for women. And so that's nice to have something empowering that they can kind of take away. And I think it's also really important to consider things like, coffee and sugar and alcohol, things we've talked about before that are going to trigger some of these hormone imbalances and change how your body is able to sort of respond to various stresses. So those things often should be considered, out of the diet. And I think those are the main things. And then really the reframing of this whole transition and stepping into your own sort of wisdom and self-care years.
That's great. Great information.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think that wraps us up for today. And are we meeting next time?
Yes, I think we are discussing thyroid
next
time, imbalances in the thyroid next Saturday at 10 a.m.
Perfect. And we will do that on Dr. Jeannie's Facebook page. So thank you everyone so much for watching and listening. We look forward to connecting with you next week. And in the meantime, be safe and take care. Bye.